Good evening, and this is Hamden Now, and I'm Rhonda Caldwell. Welcome. We're going to talk about HB 6578 tonight. This is the act concerning election participation in the state of Connecticut. We're here to talk about automatic voter registration and having parolees' voter rights being restored in the state of Connecticut through this legislation. There will be a hearing tomorrow that starts at 1 o'clock with the GAE committee. And we want to talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of this legislation and how it's going to continue to open avenues for people to get to the polls and have the right to vote and exercise their rights as citizens in the state of Connecticut. So you stay tuned. We have a really awesome panel tonight. We have Pastor Kelcy Steele from Varick Memorial. We have Taryn Lopke from Common Cause Connecticut. And we have Tracy Bowens from the Hamden Democratic Town Committee. So stay tuned. It should be really interesting information about this really important legislation in Connecticut.
Let's go! Ho, ho!
Welcome. How are you all?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello there.
Are we all excited to talk about HB 6578 tonight?
Yes.
My favorite part about it is that, they wanted to throw in automatic voter registration into this one, but they didn't want to mention that it's for the DMV automatic voter registration, which we already have. So thank you. Thank you for that expansion, but we need a little bit more. So when you're writing your testimony, which I'm going to write something up later on tonight and then email it to the website for the GAE committee, I want to make sure that they know they need to include automatic voter registration for any interactions with a Connecticut state agency, because that's really a big part of it. Because if you are a state student and you are going to Southern or Central Connecticut State University, you should automatically be registered to vote. In addition to DSS, if you're applying for food stamps or child support, you should also be automatically registered, just like you are when you go to the DMV. What are the other items you guys can think of that we can share with our viewers so they can be ready for testimony tomorrow?
Well, I think one of the important things to make it easier for people is to let them know that there's actually a template that they can just fill out. So you don't have to think this up and write it from scratch. Most of the work's been done for you. All you have to do is sign your name to it. So for folks that don't really understand the whole process or understand all the things that are being discussed, they can just show their support by filling out the template.
Yes, there's a letter at the Common Cause website. Taryn, do you have that you could drop into the chat, the Common Cause website, just so you could direct people right to that link? Because that's a really good point, Tracy, because what happens is that a lot of people say, I don't know what to say. And so what I tell them is, like, if we can put together some sample testimony, that'll be great. And so you can just copy, paste it, fill in the information that applies, tweak it a little bit, and just email it right off. It makes life a lot easier.
There's that link in our chat.
All right, great. I'm going to drop this right in. Do you guys have any other items? I know another one are the restoration of the parolee voting rights. That's a big one. Because right now, if you are on parole, you have to, I believe, apply to the Secretary of State and be approved to have your rights restored.
Yeah.
And then you also have to pay fees, I hear, Taryn. It's not good.
Well, there are fees involved with, and Pastor Steele would know more about this than I would, but there are fees involved with being incarcerated and going on parole, and there's money that has to be paid, and it's really important. It's important for that not to be required in order for a person to have their voting rights restored, because that just looks an awful lot like a poll tax.
Right. Right. Especially coming out of prison. Like, if you're coming out of incarceration, how do you have, I don't know, hundreds of dollars to pay these fees? to be able to gain entrance to the polls.
Exactly. And on top of that, a lot of the inmates that I do hear, they want to get back out and become productive citizens. And what better way to become a productive citizen to be able to take part in your democracy, you know, without paying fees and without going through such a process. And so I'm very happy that that's included in this particular bill.
Yes, I think that, you know, a biggest part of re-entering the community is being civic engagement, being involved in some level of civic engagement, because that gives you an ability to feel like you're connected to the community. So if you come out and you have to go through this big giant process just to go and vote, or even try to figure out how to get to the polls and get yourself registered, it's just outrageous. And it's suppression. People don't, that, you know, we want to kind of call it, you know, it's it's just a fee. They could just pay the fee. It's not suppression. It is, you know, and it's designed that way.
Yeah.
I think, well, when you speak about suppression, I think we need to keep in mind why this is such a perilous time. Since the Shoulder versus Holder decision in 2013, they've been ramping up voter suppression all across the country, and especially this year, the Brennan Center for Justice has said that I think there are 165 plus bills on dockets across the country in 33 straight states trying to restrict voting. And unfortunately, yes, according to them, I think about 10 or 11 are in Connecticut as well. So, you know, we have to be mindful that it's not only just stop the suppression, but go the opposite way. Do everything we can to open up voting rights to everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, see people always, I mean, I can't begin to tell you the people that, you know, when we knock doors for candidates and whatnot, and people say, oh, I'm not registered to vote. I'm not a political person. I don't get involved. I'm like, you don't have any idea how happy that makes a lot of people right now, that you don't register, you don't engage in the process, you don't hold your elected officials responsible and accountable for their actions. And it's just really incredible, because if your vote didn't mean anything, I continue to say, they wouldn't go through all this trouble trying to stop you from voting.
That's right.
And if it really voting and elected officials and people in these elected offices hold a great deal of power over all of our lives. If we didn't learn that from the insurrection on January 6th, this COVID crisis, since now we're going on a year, you know, we're actually within a year now of being in some type of lockdown. If that didn't mean like the elections matter, I don't know what does.
Yeah. But what really hits home to me, you have people that look at you as a clergyman and they would say, I wish these preachers don't get involved in politics. And I'm kind of sitting here saying, preacher getting involved, isn't that a violation to my civil rights?
Exactly.
To be able to, you know, exercise democracy by voting and being able to speak out and on different issues. And I think a lot of people, even in our community, we get that thing mixed up, you know, separation of state and church. And I tell people that I have dual citizenship. I'm a member of the United States, and I'm also a member of the Kingdom of God. And so I hold both citizenships, and I have responsibility that comes with both. And so you have in this bill, we're trying to give parolees the right to vote. And then you have people in our community that's free, that don't have to do anything, and they don't take advantage of the privilege and the civil rights that many people fought, was beaten, was murdered in order to get.
Yes. Totally true. Totally true. I mean, when we think about, you know, I mean, everybody knows John Lewis, but, you know, let's think about all the nameless and faceless Black people in the South and in the North that were beaten and killed and hung because they were lynched because they wanted to stop all the brutality of Jim Crow that was going on. And they knew the only way and the best way to do that is to put legislation and people into positions to enact legislation to stop the brutality, and the, you know, and also the economic brutality of it as well. And it's just, you know, since we are in this, you know, we were in this little period, I think, since Jim Crow ended, and we now into
Oh,
this
it ended.
little,
It ended.
well, the brutality of it. I mean, you can't roll up with our dogs and fire hoses. Like I could go out and march on the town hall right now on the town hall here in Hamden, and I don't think they're going to roll out with any fire hoses. That's what I mean about that type of.
Yeah.
But economic Jim Crow we know still exists. Right. And who's standing out there?
It also depends on what state you're in. There's still a lot of voter intimidation going on.
Oh, right here in Connecticut. I mean,
and you'll see it tomorrow. You'll see it tomorrow. If you have the ability to put the hearing tomorrow on and just let it play in the background, because I have my one computer playing in the background, and I have my work computer that I'm on working, and I just listen to it like a radio all day. And every once in a while, I have to stop and say, are they kidding?
Yeah.
I mean, because this is what happened before. I mean, when I watched the one with the HJ58 and HJ59 all day long, I had to stop and say, they kept trying to say that these things, like having a box, like this legislation has the continuation of the boxes out in front of the town hall. So when I filled out my little ballot at here on my kitchen table, I put it as sign the envelope. I just dropped it in the box. They want to get rid of the boxes because the boxes aren't safe, but they can't give you any examples of where the boxes were, caused any kind of a problem. So you listen to this. Well, we're not safe.
It's an age-old narrative, though. It's an age-old narrative to reasoning for voter restriction, saying there are people cheating, there are people voting twice. This doesn't work, but none of those things have been proven true. No. Other than you might find one example here or there, but nothing that would change any election ever. Yet it continues to be an argument. Right.
And in fact, speaking of Jim Crow and this legacy, criminal felony disenfranchisement laws, we know had their root in after the Civil War to batten down Black political power and fight against Reconstruction. And these were Southern states literally fighting to keep Black people from the polls. That is the root of these criminal disenfranchisement laws, and that is why, and that is why it is so important to take this step of restoring voting rights to folks who are re-entering their community. They should have never had them taken away in the first place.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly. I mean, between the gerrymandering, which just cracks me up. I mean, that's just like the craziest thing ever. You have people who you are specifically counting people who are not even a part of the democratic process. Could you imagine if everybody in prison had the right to vote?
Wow.
And don't they need the right to vote? Because you are now a kind of a ward of the state. And wouldn't you want to have a say in the state leadership who now has control over your daily life and your re-entry back into the society? I mean, we need to continue to have these conversations.
Well, that's I mean, there's plenty in there with with criminal justice and how prisoners are treated and stripped away. It's about much more than has nothing to do with restorative justice at all. No. It's about penalizing, and it penalizes them beyond their sentence. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It really is. And then they wonder why we have recidivism. We have people coming out and reoffending because, okay, so you're in there, you have no rights, you have nothing, you come out, you have a criminal history that follows you around for decades. There is, so you can't get housing. It's very hard to get decent housing. It's very hard to get a job. So without housing and a job and a criminal history, that doesn't sound restorative to me.
It's not.
It's not.
It's meant to be punitive, and then it's also meant to be monitorized.
And then you can't even vote out the people who control your destiny. So you don't even have a say in legislation. I mean, if it isn't the worst thing you ever heard of ever, I don't know what is.
But they'll take those federal census dollars.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So, and then I always wondered why, places like Uncasville, which I didn't even know, was on the map, and, Niantic, Connecticut, why they would petition to even have a prison in there. in their community. And now I understand why, because they get the money that goes along with it. Isn't that interesting?
And while stripping away the voting rights of the people who from whom they are stealing that money.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And we call this a democracy. So you have bodies there that you get to make money on. How about that?
It's a function of capitalism.
That's right. That's right. So, it's just really like this type of legislation. I wanted to go live today and encourage everybody to watch, send in testimony. The links are in all the chats for those. If you want to send in a written testimony, you can copy and paste it right from the Common Cause website, tweak it, and then email it off. And if you want, I think it's too late to sign up to testify for tomorrow. But if you have the ability to, like, if you're in an office all day and you have time just to have it running on your phone, have it on your computer, you'll hear some interesting arguments against this legislation.
Yes.
Very interesting arguments.
It'll go something like this. I support expanding voting rights, but
or it has to go through dual process.
A never-ending process.
Yeah.
But show me the details. This is unclear.
Or we need to study it more.
Yeah.
Now's not the time. Yeah, it needs to go back to committee because now's not the time. We need to look at this because we're not sure about the safety of it. I mean, we're really concerned about whether or not, it's not going to open up all this voter fraud. The voter fraud is going on right now because they're not included.
Clearly by our cynical comments, we've heard it all before because we've been here before. Yeah. So, I mean, we have to stop this merry-go-round.
Oh, yes.
Enough. If you're an American citizen, you have rights. The right to vote is one of them, regardless of your history. Period.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the truth of the matter is, a lot of us on here, we're running out of energy. We need new people to be registering to speak up at the public testimonies because they're tired of hearing and seeing us.
Oh, they're definitely tired of me.
I'm a professional.
I'm not
testifier.
They're like, there's that lady again from Hamden. There she goes, and she's gonna talk about white supremacy.
But if you don't speak up, the people, they won't know that you're supporting something.
Well, listen to how disingenuous it was in 2014. Every politician I've asked about early voting and no excuse absentee voting, they continue to tell me the same little falsehood. Well, in 2014, we had it on the ballot for referendum, and the voters shot it down. Every time I look at that language and they say that to me, I'm like, you need to say that running. Because I'm telling you, I can't listen to that story another second about the voters. The voters didn't want it. You put this legalized gibberish on a ballot and you expect people to figure out what you wanted and what you wanted them, what the answer was, yes or no. And then you want to speak in a very really horrific way that like, oh, well, we're just starting trouble because just 6 years ago, we tried to amend the Constitution and they didn't want it. Well, y'all try it again. Let's try it again. Let's do a do-over. And I guarantee you it'll pass this time. If we got to knock every door in Connecticut, we will do it.
That's right. Man, we have to hold our politicians to account. If they're not for it, then they have to be remembered when it's time to vote again.
Exactly.
That's absolutely correct.
Yes. Because the only thing politicians really are moved by is numbers.
Absolutely.
It's so we really have to show and hold them accountable and not just let them do anything that they want to do, because the reason that they're where they are is because we support them, and so we expect that they support us in some type way. Yeah,
I mean, you just can't show, this is, Lord, we're going to be talking about this forever, but you just cannot show up to a seat. We cannot continue on this path. These are not legacy seats because your grandfather was in that seat and your uncle was in that seat. You don't have a right to that seat. You're not the anointed one. It's that kind of party. You must be elected. That means is people have to roll to the polls, put a bubble next to your name, and then you get the seat. And you have to do the things that the people who bubbled in your name, what they say. And if you don't, then you get up and we get somebody else for your seat. Pretty simple. I mean, I don't know why it's so complicated.
It's a private party.
Do you mind if I read a couple of lines from one of the testimonies that has been submitted by somebody about these measures that's already public?
Sure.
Available? Because that's why I put my collar on for this meeting. Honestly, I don't lead a church, but when I see, but God has called me to organizing. That's okay. Just like you, Pastor Steele.
Yes. I should have put on my collar because I know when I'm on with you.
Well, I wasn't going to. I don't wear it that often, but I wasn't going to. And then I read this testimony, and I had tears in my eyes, and I thought, thank you, God. I just want to read a couple lines because this is from two people. This is from a disabled married couple in Waterbury, and looks like late Jefferson and Tyrone Jacorbo, it looks like. So they are, the reason neither of us is testifying in person on Zoom today, they're talking about tomorrow's hearing, is that we both have appointments with doctors today. And the thing is, we're probably not the only people in this situation. In our apartment building alone, there are over 150 apartments with elderly and disabled residents who need and deserve accommodation when it comes to participation in our democracy. And that is one of the things we wish to discuss. Expanding automatic voter registration beyond the Department of Motor Vehicles is just good sense. We all use these agencies. Why not save us a few valuable steps? We'll be brutally honest with you. There are days, many days, when we simply cannot make more than 1 or 2 stops outside our home and then must rest indoors for days afterward. Voting should be made simple. If you can't simplify the processes that we get our healthcare benefits, then please simplify the process through which we can vote. And then the ballot drop box was a balm for their soul, that they could use it, knowing that they had that for them. They think it should be for every election. And then closing here, and this is just beautiful, closing here, even though it's not directly related to the elderly, this person says, or the disabled, if, basically, if you take the rights away from anyone who's already served their sentence for a crime they've committed, what you're saying is that no, actually, this person is no longer an American citizen. They're a lower class than the rest of us, and they can be safely trampled upon. You are, in short, creating a caste system, and you are worth precisely as much approbation as it sounds like. You shouldn't give parolees their rights back. You should stop stripping them away.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes. Beautiful.
Look, this is why we need to submit testimony, because those people who submitted that, they took the time to submit that. It's going to be seen. It's going to be read. There are so many beautiful people in this world who just need a shot to have a megaphone.
Right. I like how they were talking about how the box was, like such a really important part of this thing. I mean, the Republicans to even suggest that the boxes are problematic is just ridiculous. It was the easiest thing ever.
You look at the success of the box of the last election, and then the numbers that were in those boxes. It's obvious that they don't want it because it's making it easier for people to get out.
Yeah, I mean, people in other parts of I remember in areas of Boston, I had a friend telling me that they had to empty a box every 2 hours.
Wow.
I mean, it was filling up literally every 2 hours. People were just running in there, but because you don't have to stand in line. You just go put your thing in the box.
What you want from a democracy? Don't you want to see those type of numbers?
Yes.
If you believe in democracy.
Yeah.
If you believe in democracy.
Yeah. Unless you want to be a 20 or 30 year incumbent and only have the same people march to the polls year after year, and then it works for you. I mean, okay, I know, there I go, I'm starting trouble again. But if you are a 20-year or 25-year incumbent and the same people every 4 years, every 2 years show up to the polls for you, isn't that the coolest thing ever? You just stay there forever. So why do we want to add new people that might vote for somebody else? I know I'm being facetious. I'm going to behave. I promised I was going to behave tonight. I know. But really, aren't they benefiting the most from this?
You know who's the benefit. Else they wouldn't. The loudest voices against open up vote or restricting voting are the ones that are benefiting from it.
Yeah. And let me tell you something about else about the incumbents while we're on that. They hate to run campaigns. So if you start to get a lot of participation show up, people registering in your district and the registration, and you see your opponent who you might have discounted, but now all of a sudden they're getting a lot of traction. They're like, I've been in this seat for 14 years. Now I actually have to fight for it. You wouldn't believe the attitudes of people who feel entitled and anointed for their seat. Like, dude, bro, that's not your, that's our seat. We'll decide who sits there, not
the people's seat.
That's the people's seat.
Yes.
You know, and they get such an attitude that we actually have to make them work to keep their seat. So if you have a whole slew of folks roll up with ballots at a box, or, you have people who, have a language barrier and they actually don't have to go to a poll and ask questions. They can fill it out at home with everybody and have one person help them fill it out, read everything to them because it's, might not be easy to read in Spanish, or you might have a handicap and you don't want to have to try to navigate through a polling station. You can actually fill it out at home and have it, and you can go take it down and put it in the box yourself. Totally awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Then, it makes it problematic.
Agreed.
Not that I'm starting any trouble, but
you never.
Only the good kind. It's why I love
good
you,
trouble.
Caldwell.
Good trouble. Good trouble. But again, and then when you get new people in, and first thing you tell them is that we're going to stop with the gerrymandering. So your first item of business is we're going to raise legislation to stop gerrymandering. What? That's going to be taking money out of those locations. Well, you can't continue to arrest and throw people in jail from New Haven and Bridgeport and Hartford and Waterbury, and then send them up there and give money to those communities. That needs to stop now. And so that, again, this is what happens, because the people that are there aren't stopping it. They're like, they act like they don't know what we're talking about. Yep. So, especially on the municipal level, I can preach about that all day. The $400 million budgets, right now, they're deliberating over the Hamden Board of Ed. They're talking about that tonight, about budgets and plans and things. It's an over $200 million budget.
Wow, we're the same shape in New Haven.
New Haven, over almost $400 million to educate 20,000 kids who are not passing math, science, or language arts.
Just haven't been to school basically all this year.
And they get an attitude with me when I bring that up. I'm like, they're not passing. And you still are asking for more money. Like, you can't, if the McDonald's burger is not good, I can't charge you more for it every year. Well, now the burger is like $50 because, it costs more every year to make that burger. It's still not tasting good, but it's inflation. It's just, we need to stop municipal governments from behaving in this manner. We can't do it unless we can put people in the positions who are not, eternal politicians, but real people want to come in with solutions and resolve some of these issues and don't care if they're going to get reelected. They're like, I need to fix this. I'm not trying to use this as a stepping stone. HB 6578 helps that situation. It stops it because it says that it opens up access for people. So if you don't behave the way that we think you should behave, then we can now flood the boxes and the booth and the voting and the actual polls with people who say we need to change.
And besides any reason why to do it, the fundamental thing, it's the right thing to do. If you're going to call people American citizens, one of their fundamental rights is the right to vote, not when or if. It's just is. It's a fundamental right. And to the point of that letter, it's a right that should have been taken away in the first place.
Exactly.
Yes. I mean, and again, if you have any time to listen to this the people, the opposition tomorrow, they will say, what's the problem? Just roll in and vote. Nobody's stopping you. And I said, now we all know those 3-hour lines are definitely stopping you. Standing in a line with a small child or a disabled parent in the rain, in the cold, in the middle of a pandemic is stopping people. And so, I mean, nobody's stopping you. You can go vote all you want. No. I mean, even closing down polling stations. Like I remember Tracy at our last DTC meeting, we were talking about expanding polling stations in the Westwood section of Hamden to make it a little bit more available for the first district. Because I know that they have to kind of come all the way down to the library here to vote. So that was an issue. But even expanding, so you don't have one polling station that has, people standing in line out in the parking lot trying to get in. And then you have one, which is the middle school here in Hamden, where there's like nobody, again.
And didn't they close the Keep Center polling? Didn't they close it before 8, even though there was a line and folks were if you're in line by 8, you get to vote.
That's right.
Yeah, but there were people still running up to the door about quarter of, and the doors were locked all day. Literally at the Keep Center, the doors were locked all day, and so there was a guy sitting in the chair, and he kept going and opening the doors, and he said, frankly, they didn't have a key to open the door, so the maintenance people let them in, and they had that kind of door where I guess you had to push the thing in and then turn the key, and that would have allowed it to stay open, but. When I don't know, I wasn't there early in the morning, but I was there, like later on in the, in the morning and then the afternoon. And, people had to keep going up, knocking on the door to get in. And then if he was inside doing something else, or he took like a bathroom break or something, people were walking away and we were like, no, go back. They're not closed. It doesn't close at 8 o'clock. And so a big verbal altercation broke out because it was like, you cannot lock the door. And people,
this
is election day.
It is against the statute.
Election day.
Yep.
What? Okay.
And so, a big thing happened, and so I if you want to go to our page, go back to that election day. I was, I live streamed it. That's what I do.
Okay.
If there's
that's kind of bold.
I mean, right there, that's it. That is the image of what we're up against.
So that's kind of bold.
Keep beating the door down.
Yeah, and there was other people that we had there too that were rolling up to the door, and then they came running back out, and we were like, "What happened?" They're like, "Oh, I'm not registered," and so then they had to get down. This is like 7:40.
Okay.
They had to go flying down Dixwell Avenue to City Hall to get there before they close, so they can vote and register the same day.
Automatic voter registration.
Right. And it was a young people. I mean, they had to be like maybe 20s, early 20s or so. And they were really actively, and they literally came running out, jumped in the car and went zooming off because they wanted an 8 o'clock deadline.
So don't let anybody tell us this is not about fighting voter suppression to pass automatic voter registration, because it absolutely is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's just so, again, people just get really upset. They drink out the Maalox bottle. They get when they realize that there's a lot of people coming out to vote. It just makes folks really nervous. It's like, it's just amazing. It's just amazing, and we're going to continue this. I mean, Hamden Action Now, Generation Change, Connecticut, Black and Brown United. We are going to get our communities engaged in this process, and that is just too bad for who doesn't like it. We're, the green card holding West Indians and Bridgeport, Connecticut, they are on fire right now. And there are thousands of people that are going to apply for citizenship, get that in place. And the first item of business is to go register for voting. I mean, we're talking a huge voting block in Hartford and in Bridgeport and around the state. That are, registered and documented aliens, but they need to have this election really made it real for everybody. So expanding automatic voter registration, restoring parolee voting rights, vitally important to really holding our legislative officials accountable and giving them serious consequences, like losing your seat, and because it's not really your seat, it's the people's seat, so you can get up, and then being able to have the numbers, like you said, Pastor Steele, it's about numbers, right? So our numbers need to start counting. Totally cool. Totally cool. So does anybody have any final words for tomorrow to encourage everybody to go out and write testimony?
I would just like to encourage everyone to take this year's series as last year. Although we're getting ready to elect local officials, that's very important. And so, we need to continue to do voter registration and getting people to turn out to vote with the same passion and zeal that we had for the presidential election.
Yes, yes.
Yes, indeed.
What about you, Tracy?
Well, to echo that, if everyone can get out and just sign, send in a written testimony, this is a fight that we're all involved in, and we all have our parts to do, whether large or small. This is a simple ask, just to fill out a template, sign your name, and send it in. If you care about voting rights, which we all should, it's a simple ask, and we're all a part of this.
Taryn?
What you all said.
Well, that's the first reverend that's been short of words. So no offense, Pastor Steele. But no, well, my final words are that, the democracy belongs to us. We are the democracy. We are the ones that decide who and how much to pay for it. And I want everybody to tell, if whoever's listening and can be encouraged, go tell people who say that they're not political. Oh, I'm not political, I don't get involved. Ask them where their kids go to school. Do they go to public school? Yes or no? They go to public school, then they're political because they're paying for their kids to go to public education. If they live in Connecticut because they pay property taxes. Whether you rent or you own, you still pay property taxes. So that's I rent, I don't pay. Yeah, you pay. That property is being charged property taxes.
Yes, it is.
All right. And if you drive on public streets, so you're a political person. You just need to you need to now become civically engaged in this process. So I want to encourage everybody to come out, get involved tomorrow. Like I said, just if you have a chance to scroll through some of the testimony, if you have time to put it on if you get the link to actually get to the, it's on YouTube, and it's GAE Committee YouTube channel, and or you can watch it on CTN.com, which is the CT network, the Connecticut network, and you can also watch it there. But just listen to how hard they're trying to stop this, and then you'll see how important your vote is.
There's a Facebook event that they can go to. I'll have the link. The one you made, Rhonda.
Oh, yes. On Hamden Action Now, there's an event. And the link is there on that event to be able to take you right to the video, which starts tomorrow at 1:00. So, if you have time, I think I'm number 35, which means I probably won't go on till about 7:00. But you already know what I'm going to say. I'm going to talk about white supremacy. I'm going to talk about racism, because that's where we are. This is where we live. This is why we have to do this, because these things were designed to insulate the electorate. It's to insulate elected officials. I mean, this is all designed to insulate elected officials. All right. And have coronations every 2 years. No, I think we're done with that. We're done. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for this really quick talk about voter suppression and ending it in the state of Connecticut, and to support HB 6578 tomorrow, which is a very important bill on expanding automatic voter registration and restoring parolee voting rights immediately upon exiting and entering back into the community. So we're hoping we can get everybody's support tomorrow, and we'll keep you posted. We'll let you know how it goes.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Rhonda.
much.
Thank you,
Enjoy
Rhonda.
the rest of your
Good job.
evening. It's always a pleasure to talk with you guys. Always. Take
Thank
care.
you.
All right.